Howdy Commanders, Echo here. Today we'd like to discuss 10 tips to help you improve your gameplay. The game in the background, primarily for your enjoyment, is on Tiers of the Cruisers, the 4-cap arrangement. We're divvied up with DB and Death Shadow. We're in the Tier 6 French Tech Tree Destroyer, the Vauquelin. You can see we've spawned in the southeast at Charlie, and we are punching down to 5. This game in the background is also a bit of an example of a divisional carry, as the thumbnail may have alluded to. I may jump in on this from time to time, but our main focus today in this video is going to be on those 10 tips. Now, these 10 tips that we're going to talk about are very general. They're not specific to any one ship or ship type, any nation, any particular map, or even any game mode. They're very general, as I said, and kind of apply across the entirety of World of Warships Legends. These tips are designed so that they can help really anyone, be it your first day to the game or your 5,000 games in. It matters not. Hopefully, some of these tips will help you out. And lastly, before we really dig into them, these tips aren't necessarily in any particular order. They're just roughly in the order that I thought of them in. Tip number 1, you're already doing. You're being proactive and seeking out resources about this game. A lot of that comes through YouTube channel videos, like those found on my channel or others like it, as well as streams through YouTube or other platforms. The comment sections on those videos and the chat sections on those streams, posts on Reddit and threads on Discord, and other resources along those lines. By doing this, you're already better than most people, probably 60 to 80% of the player base, just by demonstrating that you have a knowledge and a willingness to improve that knowledge and seek out those who may be better than you and have something you can learn from. We do this across other aspects of our lives where we learn from others and are taught by them, so why wouldn't we do it in our game of Legends? Now, there's a lot of things in this game that you can eventually sort of learn on your own through trial and error or osmosis, but by actively seeking out resources to teach yourself about the game, it decreases the learning curve and speeds up that process of getting better. Now, you still need to apply any knowledge you're getting through YouTube or posts, etc., and then you need to execute that knowledge. But by doing this, you do get quite a bit of a leg up on a big chunk of the player base who just simply doesn't care and isn't doing it. Tip number 2 is to save and watch your own replays. As they say, hindsight will win you every battle. Now, sports teams watch back their footage of games and go over what their mistakes were and what their successes were. And real-world militaries, including navies around the world, do things called after-action reviews. After combat actions or training missions, go back and say, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we continue to do in the future? What do we need to change up to do better in the future? And I encourage you to do much the same. Take time at the end of every battle to look at the post-battle results screen, look at the team rosters, and just kind of think for 30 seconds to a minute about how that game went. And every once in a while, maybe a game or two here and there across each play session, save the replays so that you can go back and actually watch those games in their entirety from time to time. Now, I wouldn't save just great games, those Krakens or those 4,000 base XP or those 150,000 damage games, but save some kind of average games where maybe you're like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th on the leaderboard. Maybe it was, it was okay, but you felt there were maybe some mistakes. And definitely save a stinker of a game every once in a while. Maybe you get dev struck early on, or maybe you take a load of torps that you weren't expecting. And watch those back and really reflect, okay, in order to prevent that from happening in the future, what do I need to change? I've been doing this technique since the first day I started playing this game, and I recently went back and watched some replays, just kind of randomly selected from my first 100 couple games or so, and I was getting a little heated at myself. So another benefit of doing this is that over time, as you get up into the thousands and thousands of games played, it helps to kind of go back every once in a while and remind yourself that you haven't always been as good as you are now, because everybody will get better over time, and it's nice to keep that in mind. I think we could all use that bit of perspective from time to time. Tip number 3 sort of follows logically from tip 2, and that's to stick around to watch the end of games, especially if you die fairly late in the game and it's looking like it's still pretty close. This can help out a couple of ways. One, you can hop on comms and help out those that are still alive. Dead men do talk in this game, especially if those people that are still alive are division mates of yours. Definitely want to be helping them out, provide what information you can, and try to pull that win out. This can also be a source of drama. A lot of this game can come down to kind of last second crazy finishes. Maybe there's a guy that needs to go on a crazy like solo warrior hard carry. So it could definitely be a source of like last second drama. Provide some excitement just by sticking around, hanging out till the end. But in terms of getting better at your overall game, what sticking around and watching to the end can do is often teach you what not to do. Learning from the mistakes of others, and so that way when you are the last or one of the last ones alive in a future game, you can know what not to do if you're placed in a similar situation, so that you can pull out the win when maybe this time your team didn't quite pull out the win. Tip number 4 is to pick a thing and focus on it. Choose any aspect of the game. Be intentional and consciously focus on improving that one narrow aspect of the game every single time you leave port. This can be things like keeping your eye on the map, armor angling, your torpedo beat skills, hitting destroyers, especially at range, hitting ships that are in the middle of a turn, etc. As an example for me, I noticed initially in my first couple hundred games that I was dying a ton every time I would beach. So I made a conscious effort to just not beach as often. And now this is a thing where you really got to focus on it, maybe even let other aspects of the game drop out of your mind for a second as you really focus on this. And then as you get better, you can let this stuff kind of fade into the background as it becomes more and more of a muscle memory. Lastly, under this point, I want to encourage you to look for opportunities to work on these things that you've chosen, but don't force them. You know, don't like intentionally get torpedoed so you can work on your torpedo beat skills. It's not a good idea. For tip number 5, I'd defer to Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Captains, you have got to learn the stats of your ship and the stats of the other ships that you will be fighting. So that way when you see 3 triple torps sail past you, you know that that's the Fubuki and not the Mahan, and you can act accordingly. When you're brawling with another battleship bow into each other, you know you can overmatch his bow, but he can't overmatch yours. You just have to know that the Wichita has a 30-second duration 9.0 kilometer radar, and that the smoke fire penalty for a Kutuzov is 7.7 kilometers. You have to just become an encyclopedia, commit this stuff to memory, and have it at your disposal in the middle of a battle. Now, some of this stuff can be influenced and changed by commander builds and ship setups, but a lot of it is static and doesn't change as a result of those things. This also applies to things that are dynamic in the game that change moment to moment. Your health, friendly's health, enemy's health, positioning, points, capture points held, etc. So this is also something that you have to be paying attention to and keeping track of in the middle of every single game. One of the easiest ways to know thy enemy and thyself is to do tip number 6, which is to play every ship on the tech tree. Play laterally across the tech tree. Don't just race down 1 or 2 lines all the way up to 7. Play from, tier 1, then tier 2, then tier 3, 4, 5, all the way up, all the ships, all the classes, all the nations. That way, when you're in a match and you say, oh, I know the strengths and weaknesses of that ship that I'm fighting right over there because I just played it 2 rounds ago. One side benefit of this is that it also keeps your commanders on track and you don't become under-leveled for your tier. By the way, cue the torpedo beats! No, we did it! Lastly, under this point, when you hit a new tier for the first time, let's say you move on from 5, you start getting into your tier 6 ships, and now you're up against some 7s occasionally, go into that ship tab menu, look at those tier 7s, start to learn them, go on YouTube, watch videos, watch reviews, so you can know as much about those new tier 7s that you're up against as possible. There's also a bit of a hashtag Dear Wargaming moment. In the game, we need a way to see every single ship that's in the game. Not just the ones on the tech tree, not just some of the premiums that are in the store or that are purchasable through the tech tree. We need to be able to look at the stats for every single ship in the game, as well as the consumable stats of ships we do not own. Call this an intelligence center or an encyclopedia section or something. Build it in with the armor viewer in some way. But we need a way to be able to see the stats of every single ship that's available for play in the game that we might be up against, including the consumable statistics of ships we don't own. By playing every nation, every class, and every tier, this also helps you with tip number 7, which is to think like the enemy. If you're a battleship main and you're sick of getting torped by destroyers, then start playing destroyers so you can get in their head, and then the next time you're in a battleship, you can think to yourself, okay, now if I was in a destroyer, where would I be? Would I torp me right now? I'd torp me. If you're in a destroyer and you want to land more torpedoes on battleships, then think like the battleship. Is he going to armor angle and start to go bow into my friendly over here that's 2 kilometers away from me? Okay, if he's going to turn to do that, how do I need to aim my torps accordingly? If you're in a cruiser shooting at a DD, you got to think to yourself, how is that DD going to try to wiggle and waggle to try to get away from my shots and then aim accordingly so his wiggle and his waggle don't work? And then beyond this interplay of the classes, you also need to think about what the enemy's going to do given the current game situation. You know, ship count, points held, points on the board, etc. As an example, in that last exchange with that Akatsuki, I figured he would have come out of Bravo that he had just capped a moment before and try to ambush me around the corner of that island because I had been spotted by the Gepard when we were in a gunfight. So I figured the Akatsuki would be coming around there because he knew my heading, my relative speed, etc., and he was going to try to set up an ambush. I even said it over the comms. I called it out to my teammates. I said, I bet I'm going to run to this Akatsuki right around here, and boom, 2 seconds later it happened. So I already had my guns pre-locked, and I turned right as I came around the corner there and spotted him, anticipating his torps. Well, and you saw how that ended up. Another way to improve your gameplay is with tip number 8, and that is to play a given ship multiple times, back to back to back. This will help you get into the groove of that ship and really get it humming. This makes it easier to commit that ship's particular playstyle and nuances to memory, and then you're not constantly just like bouncing around from ship to ship to ship, class to class to class, and you're never really getting a feel for any one ship in particular. Tip number 9 is that you should constantly be asking yourself, what do we need to do to win? This is a question that should always be in your mind, even before the game timer starts ticking down, but it should grow louder and louder and louder in your mind as the game gets later and later and later. This will prevent you from chasing off some ship to the map border for no reason, even though the enemy's up 3 caps to 1, and encourage you to make a little course correction. Usually figuratively, but oftentimes literally. And lastly, tip number 10 is to play in a division. This is a team game after all, and it does help to be in a team. That's a replay. Holy fuck. I better not pull this horseshoe out of my ass because I dodged that Gepard's torps 3 times. And that Akatsuki. Oh my god. Fucking hard carry. Look at all the medals. And I got 4 kills and you guys got 6 medals between the 2 of you. Holy shit. Oh my god, I'm shaking. That is such an adrenaline rush. Well, hopefully you enjoyed my live reaction there at the end of that. That was certainly an intense game. You know, one of those games we play for. Well, as we wrap this up, we'll take a look at the build here. Hopefully you enjoyed those 10 tips and that you can use some or even all of them to improve your gameplay across all tiers, classes, maps, and modes. Let me know in the comments below, which of these will you be implementing to improve your gameplay? And what are some of your tips and suggestions for improving gameplay? Perhaps I'll compile them and do another video, 10 more tips or something like that. Thanks an awful lot for listening, Commanders. I really appreciate it. And as always, stay salty, Commanders.